Chinese influencer gets kicked out of Taiwan after their pro-Beijing content was ruled to have broken the law. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte heads to The Hague, charged with crimes against humanity. Talks of peace in Ukraine as Kiev accepts a ceasefire plan proposed by the US.
Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road.
Plus, powerboat racers in Japan are chasing new fans and outrunning a shadowy reputation. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. A Chinese social media influencer in Taiwan has had her residency revoked. Authorities say she poses a national security threat because of pro-unification videos she posted online. Cadence Correnta has been following this story and joins us now from our newsroom in Taipei. Cadence, how is the government able to take away someone's residency like this?
Well, that's a good question. This is about a Chinese influencer called Yaya in Taiwan. She lives in Taiwan and has a residency card here because she's married to a Taiwanese citizen. But importantly, she's not a Taiwanese citizen herself. And immigration authorities have found that she has posted videos on her social media advocating for the unification of China and Taiwan with the use of force. And if you look at her content, a lot of it is about cross-strait issues and unification. Let's take a look at one of her videos.
根据反分裂国家法第8条，台独分裂势力以任何名义、任何方式造成台湾从中国分裂出去的事实，国家得采取非和平方式及其他必要措施，捍卫国家主权和领土的完整。大陆武力统一台湾已经不需要其他的理由了呀。
It's videos like this that have worried immigration officials here. They have revoked her residency permit and have said that she has to leave Taiwan, and that they also said that she can't apply for a new residency permit for the next 5 years. Today, one Taiwanese official explained their decision this way.
所有的台湾人都知道，言论自由不是天上掉下来的礼物，也不是武力统战或者是武力侵犯台湾的借口。台湾社会呢，你触犯到言论自由的底线，然后触犯到我们法律底线的话，我们希望用这个法律的规定来予以严格处理。
So, can you explain why this decision has been controversial?
Well, the influencer says that if she can't say what she wants to say online, then what is the meaning of free speech in Taiwan? And she also says that she lives in Taiwan, so she's the last person that would want a cross-strait war. But the Taiwanese government has been trying to combat what they say is Chinese infiltration and propaganda in Taiwan. And they're having to balance what they say is walking the line between maintaining free speech and protecting Taiwan's sovereignty.
Thank you, Cadence. That was Cadence Correnta live in Taipei. Now, to learn more about the overlap of Taiwan's free speech and national security laws, reporter Chris Goran spoke with research professor at law at Academia Sinica Jimmy Jiaxin Xu.
In general, what kind of free speech protections does Taiwan have compared to other democracies?
Well, in general, Taiwan enjoys a high level of free speech protection. Not unlike other advanced liberal democracies. I think Taiwan enjoys consistently high scores on Freedom House, on civil and political liberties. Taiwan's constitutional protection has been influenced a lot by basically the government is discouraged, to regulate speech, directly targeting its content. When it comes to content neutral regulations,
there's been a recent case of a Chinese social media influencer who is married to a Taiwanese citizen and living in Taiwan, but is herself not a Taiwanese citizen, getting her residency revoked for making videos supporting unification with China. Would free speech protections in Taiwan extend to someone like that?
there is actually a gray area in terms of the free speech protection enjoyed by resident aliens. Mainlanders constitute a category of itself because it is regulated under a special statute. Given the current circumstances, actually would afford them even less civil rights protection, in contrast to other foreigners, because the administration can always say that we're regulating a group of people who come from an enemy state. I have serious reservations about its constitutionality, but it is the reality on the ground.
But when does political speech become a security threat? You know, it's often said that free speech doesn't protect yelling fire in a crowded theater. Is that the kind of standard that's in use in Taiwan?
You know, as a free speech scholar, I think it's not a particularly good idea just to target a political speech like this. Free speech is often counterintuitive because it is precisely because we hear things offensive. We hear things that we hate, that we need free speech protection. And we need it because a democratic society should be tolerant. So you just mentioned, shouting fire in a crowded theater. And that has to do with a clear and present danger, and not just speech. Try to win over their hearts and mind instead of just shut them up. Because other than those, mainlander resident aliens, there could well be a group of people in Taiwan who thinks the same thing. How do you win them over? How do you build a stronger Taiwan? You don't act like the mainland.
That was legal scholar Jimmy Jiaxin Xu. Taiwan's military says it will conduct immediate combat readiness drills on March 17th to test how quickly the armed forces can mobilize in the event of war. The defense minister says the exercises will last 5 days and all 3 service branches will participate. The military says that no live ammunition will be used, but soldiers across the country will be carrying out realistic plans. A source within the military says the drills are a warm-up for the annual Hanguang exercises in July. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is on his way to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The 79-year-old is facing charges of crimes against humanity over his now infamous war on drugs that left thousands dead. His arrest and extradition has split Philippine society, but those who lost relatives in the crackdown are at last finding some closure, as John Van Trieste reports.
A jet with former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte on board takes off from Manila to cheers from people on the ground. These aren't well-wishers. They're saying good riddance. Duterte's on his way to The Hague to face charges over the killing of alleged drug dealers and users during his time in office from 2016 to 2022. Thousands may have been killed without ever facing trial. But Duterte's outraged supporters are here too, backing his daughter, the current vice president, who says his arrest on Tuesday was illegitimate. Under Duterte, the Philippines withdrew from the very international criminal court that's now set to try him.
There is no legal basis at all to turn over or to endorse the president, the former president, to ICC. So, wala silang, kung para sila sa justice at sa batas, walang batas.
Until recently, it looked like the Philippines wouldn't cooperate with the court. The Duterte family had struck an alliance with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., and he long insisted Duterte would be protected. But that alliance has fallen apart. The president now says the arrest had to happen, even if the Philippines rejects the court's jurisdiction.
Interpol asked for help, and we obliged because we have commitments to the Interpol, which we have to fulfill. If we don't do that, they will no longer help us with other cases involving Filipino fugitives abroad.
But for the families of those killed, Duterte's extradition is about more than politics. At a candlelit church service in Manila, they mourned some of the countless victims, those who at least have someone to remember them. For many, Duterte's arrest brings a small sense of justice.
For the first time, ngayon lang ako nakaramdam ng ganitong kaligayahan dahil sa wakas, yung hinaasam-asam ko na katarungan para sa kapatid kong pinatay, sinagot na, unang-una ng Panginoon, nagpapasalamat ako kasi talagang dinidig niya lahat ang aming mga panalangin para lang mangyari ang lahat ng ito.
The debate over Duterte's arrest, whether it's justice or an injustice, is far from over. But for families like these, so is the pain of what they lost during his time in office, whether the charges against him stick or not. Hank Xu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Poland has confirmed that US arms supplies to Ukraine have resumed. It comes after Ukraine got behind a US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire deal, the first step in what Washington hopes will be a lasting peace agreement with Russia. But sources close to the Kremlin say Russia is acting wary of the proposal. Rick Lauert reports.
Make or break talks on peace in Ukraine. And now on the table, a potential ceasefire after more than 3 years of all-out war with Russia.
І сьогодні в розмові була пропозиція саме американської сторони зробити перший крок одразу далі. Україна сприймає цю пропозицію. Ми вважаємо це позитивним. Ми готові зробити такий крок.
But, as US President Donald Trump, who brokered negotiations in Saudi Arabia, put it, it takes two to tango. And now the world is waiting for Russia's response.
Ukraine, ceasefire. Ukraine, ceasefire. Just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road.
Getting this so-called Ukraine peace show on the road has become the foreign policy goal for Trump in the first few weeks of his presidency. In a major departure from his predecessor, Trump is shifting towards Russia and has been berating Zelensky.
I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You haven't been alone. We gave you through this stupid president.
Kicking him out of the White House and halting all US military aid and intelligence sharing. But after these latest talks, that vital lifeline for Ukraine is now plugged back in, emboldening Zelensky as he sues for peace, but doing little to repair fraught transatlantic relations. Europe is now boosting military spending in a way not seen since the end of the Cold War.
We face a clear and present danger seen by none of us in our lifetimes. More than ever, Europe must prepare for the worst to prevent the worst. Geopolitical reality is changing before our eyes. More than ever, we must stand on our 2 feet, take charge of our own defence and of deterrence.
Europe is scrambling to react to the US's sudden shift in stance and to push back against Trump's belief that Putin wants peace. Thoughts echoed on the streets of Ukraine's capital.
Росія не готова припинити вогонь. Були декілька переговорів, і ми розуміємо, що навіть під час цих переговорів наступав вогонь, наступали ракети. Тобто ми в цей час страждаємо.
Тому що ми вже Росії не довіряємо. То їхні обіцянки, то що вони, ми готові. Вони готові, але в цей час вони дотримують свої думки. Своїх дій і те, що вони обіцяють, вони дотримують.
As global leaders talk peace, war grinds on. Ukraine launched its largest ever drone attack on Moscow, killing at least 2 people. And the only response so far from Russia has been renewed airstrikes on Kyiv. Peace here still feeling like a very remote possibility. James Lin and Rick Lauert for TaiwanPlus.
Anxiety over US President Donald Trump's tariff threats is simmering here in Asia. South Korea says Trump's America First policies are targeting its country, while Japan says it's failed to secure tariff exemptions from the US. For more on how Trump's aggressive economic policy is impacting this part of the world, Joyce Zhang spoke with Song Soo Kim, a visiting professor in Taipei from South Korea's Yonsei University.
In response to Trump's tariffs, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, all key U.S. allies and partners in Asia, they say they're trying to find win-win agreements. What exactly does that look like, and what do these countries need to do to make that happen?
We are in a very difficult situation because Trump is trying to raise tariff against Taiwan, Korea, and Japan. Although, like, Taiwan promised a strong investment recently between, TSMC and US. And also Japan promised a strong investment. Ishiba had a summit with Trump. They promised a $1 trillion investment. But Trump is still trying to put countries in a difficult situation for further negotiation. Economic, relationship and security is a trade-off in the US mindset. So they are demanding more investment and more stronger ties in the United States, in turn providing a security to these countries. For US, what's really important is that they win the battle of AI against China or any other country. So that's the top priority that US is focusing on, and which they're asking the cooperation of Taiwan, Korea, Japan to be cooperative in that roadmap.
These three countries are obviously each important to the global chip sector. Aside from tariffs, though, Trump has also talked about getting rid of Biden's CHIPS Act subsidy program. How serious is this for Asian firms in the sector?
I think that US will not totally get rid of the CHIPS Act. Trump is just saying that they will decide the amount of subsidies based on how much investment each countries make in US. Actually, by pressuring Taiwan, US is getting into a better position negotiating with South Korea because they're giving a strong message that even Taiwan, that has invested this much, will still have problems. Giving a strong message to Korea and Japan that the investments should be more, cooperative and realistic in their terms.
And how far can Trump go on his threats? At what point does he need these partners on his side?
So the priority is to find a middle ground between, US and these countries in negotiation. Korea, Taiwan, and Japan are the key players of supplying those most essential semiconductors to run the high-tech industry in the United States. So without these three countries, US high-tech industry does not function, or any global high-tech industry will not function. US is considering, these three countries very, very important as an economic partner and also a science and technology partner, and also by providing security, because they can't grow without these countries.
That was Sung-Soo Kim, visiting business professor at National Taiwan University. Coming up after the break. Campaigns to remove dozens of opposition lawmakers move forward.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, follow TaiwanPlus on socials. Pika!
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Taiwan's Great Recall movement continues, with dozens of opposition lawmakers now one step closer to getting voted out. Tiffany Wong reports from the legislature.
As of Wednesday, there are campaigns against 34 lawmakers, all from the KMT, that have made it into the second stage of the recall process. That means that they've already secured the support, the signatures of 1% of voters in their constituency, and those signatures have all been verified by the Central Election Commission. Now, there are 4 campaigns against lawmakers from the Democratic Progressive Party, the ruling party, that have not passed that stage. However, they have been given extra time to remedy signatures and paperwork in that stage. But campaigners in Greater Taipei are already scrambling to gather signatures in the second, tougher stage, where they'll need the signatures of 10% of constituents to sign their petitions. This is all part of a massive recall movement that was spurred by the ruling party's frustration with not being able to pass any bills because the opposition keeps blocking it. And their caucus leader called for a crusade against opposition lawmakers, but eventually we saw campaigns against 50 lawmakers across parties. But again, only those campaigns against the main opposition, Kuomintang, have moved forward so far. But recalls are still a difficult process in Taiwan. Only one lawmaker has ever been successfully removed in this manner before. And now in the second stage, there is the daunting task of getting 10% of constituents to sign those petitions. And the election officials will definitely be keeping a sharp eye on verifying those signatures before they move forward to the third stage. So it is possible that some of the campaigns would end here. But even if they do pass and make it to the final voting stage, they'll need to get the votes of 25% of constituents in their district to support the removal of this official in order to successfully remove them. And that's no easy feat, because in Taiwan, there's no such thing as absentee voting, meaning that people will have to go back to their hometowns and submit their ballot in person. The whole process could take months, and it's likely that if any of these pass onto the third voting stage, we won't actually see those votes happen until the fall. But until then, these campaigns are sure to keep legislators on edge. Devin Tsai, Kama Street, and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Food delivery platform Uber Eats has dropped its bid to buy the Taiwan business of rival Foodpanda. But its parent company must now pay $250 million to end the agreement. In December, Taiwan's Fair Trade Commission blocked a $950 million merger of the two companies. It said the merger would give Uber a monopoly of more than 90% of Taiwan's food delivery market. Uber says it will not appeal the ruling. Foodpanda's parent company Delivery Hero says the ruling will not affect an agreement for Uber to buy a $300 million stake in the company. TSMC is reportedly asking US tech firms like Nvidia, AMD and Broadcom to each take a stake in Intel's chip-making business. Sources familiar with internal talks told Reuters that the Taiwanese chip giant is proposing to run the struggling US firm's foundries, but not own a majority stake. Washington has allegedly asked TSMC to help revive the American chip sector, but US President Donald Trump has been vocal against selling Intel to a foreign company. None of the companies mentioned in the report have commented on the matter. Japan's powerboat racing community is chasing new audiences and competitors. But can this fast-paced sport outrun its shadowy reputation? Bryn Thomas reports.
In Japan's Kyoto races, the roar of outboard motors is often only drowned out by the roar of crowds.
生身の人間がボートを操って迫力のあるスピードで水面を走るというところはなかなか他で見ることはないと思うので、レース場に来て見ていただいたらすごいスピード感とか爽快感が楽しめると思うので。
With pilots carving tight corners at upwards of 80 kilometers per hour, accidents are common. At least 30 people have died since the sport's inception in the 1950s. And yet, in Japan, its association with betting is what gives it a bad reputation.
やっぱりギャンブルっていうイメージでちょっとなんか同級生にも選手になるって言えなかった感じです。今ねもうなんか華やかな感じで憧れの世界になってるけど。
Alongside speedway and bike and horse racing, powerboating is one of the few sports people can legally bet on in Japan. But that's led to a number of high-profile scandals. One, in 2020, saw a racer sentenced to 3 years for match fixing.
に対するやはり信用を大きく失ったというのはもう間違いないと思います。それ以上にですね、今私どもではもう二度とそういうことが起きないように、先ほど言ったような対策を取っておるところでございます。
Strict controls are in place to prevent cheating. At the start of a competition week, pilots pass through metal detectors to check for phones before being confined to on-site dormitories to prevent information leaks. They're even required to maintain their own equipment during that period, acting as both competitors and engineers.
やっぱりプロペラだったり整備だったりするのは年齢を重ねていくごとに多分アップしていくから落ちることはないと思うんですね。
Despite a poor reputation, the sport is uniquely inclusive. Men compete alongside women, and pilots as old as 75 race against opponents like Takahashi Suzuka, who is 17.
まあ新鮮ですけど、やっぱ水面に出るとやっぱりみんな一緒なので、年齢の差とかはレースになったらあまり感じないです。
Fans compare the sport to Formula One, and organizers have launched ad campaigns hoping to outpace its reputation and attract new fans.
小さい子供とか小学生、中学生の方もテレビを見てボートレーサー目指したいっていう人が増えてきたので、だいぶメジャーな競技にはなってきたのかなとは思います。
With a new generation of racers and fans turning up to Kyoto events, the sport's future looks bright. Evidence that the excitement of high speed and roaring motors may be enough to leave the scandals of the past in their wake. Ryan Wu and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, check out these highlights from the last day of Paris Fashion Week, which wrapped up in the French capital on Tuesday. I'm Yin Khvat. Take care. See you next time.